So look, I know I'm about 12 years late to the party, but I finally got a trash can Mac Pro. So what exactly am I doing with a 2013 Mac Pro in 2025? Well, listen, all right, when these came out in December of 2013, this was like my dream, like, holy grail computer. And being 13 at the time, I couldn't even afford the base model, which I believe was like $3,000 or something like that. However, at this point, being 12 years old and also pretty much regarded as the worst Mac Pro ever made, they're pretty valueless. I paid $180 for this, and it's got the 6-core Xeon, 32 gigs of RAM, a D500 graphics card, and a 500 gigabyte SSD. So it's not exactly base trim, it's not really super high end either. It's roughly right middle of the line spec for these things back when they were brand new. I've also got a few reasons to suspect that this thing was very rarely, if even ever, used in its entire life, because first off, it's running OS X Mavericks. I believe it's on 10.9.5, and also judging from just the pictures on eBay, it looks like brand new. No scratches, no fingerprints, no dings, nothing like that. And also just the fact that it came with its original box, which is in like immaculate shape. I mean, the pull tab has been pulled, as you can see, but other than that, this box looks pretty much exactly how it would have brand new in 2013. So I think it's time to finally fulfill my fantasy that I had as a 13-year-old and finally get this thing out of its box. Before we get to the computer, I actually do want to check out the included paperwork, because there is a chance, just judging by all the other factors that tell me this thing was very rarely used, this might still have its Apple stickers. Full speed ahead. Here, let's take a look at this really quick. Welcome to your new Mac Pro. You're about to begin a very happy and productive relationship. Yeah, this pretty much just tells you about the new design. And again, like, even just in the pictures, it looks so cool. This is like the main reason I wanted one of these things back in the day. And of course, the removable shell, which actually still kind of lives on in the Mac Pro today. This is something you will probably never see in a Mac startup guide again. It literally tells you how to add RAM to it. The good old days, man. And apparently it could support 36 Thunderbolt devices, which is actually pretty cool, which if I remember correctly, since this thing had 6 Thunderbolt 2 ports on the back of it, and you could daisy chain, I think, 6 devices off of one port. Yeah, that adds up. You can also see that it had the dual Ethernet ports as well. All right, moment of truth. Do we get stickers? No way. Dude, it's got the black stickers. I think this was actually the first Mac that included black Apple stickers. Wow, I honestly didn't even expect it to have that. That's really, really cool to have. We'll go ahead and slide that back into the box for safekeeping, and now it's finally time to get the actual computer out of the box. Gosh, and there she is, man. Look at this thing. Is this not the coolest computer you've ever seen? Look at it. It's all like futuristic and sleek and gray, and it's got all the freaking ports on the back. And here's your lock unlock to slide the shell up and off of it. Oh man, this is... I never thought I would actually own one of these things, and the fact that they're like pretty much valueless now is crazy, because it doesn't feel like they came out that long ago, but here we are with one. 12 years later. So I can already tell this thing is a complete fingerprint magnet, but on the back here we've got all of our ports. It looks like we've got a audio out. No, actually no, this might be line out. See, we've got a headphone jack and then potentially a line out, which is really, really cool. I don't remember them having that. We've got our 4 USB A's, we've got our 6 Thunderbolt 2s, we've got our dual, I believe, gigabit Ethernet. I don't think they were doing 10 gig at this point. And then we've got our HDMI 1.4 and our power button and our IEC power connector. And there's the bottom of it, where, as you can see, this was actually assembled within the United States, which is another thing that's really cool about these little guys. Oh, let's go ahead and do this thing's party trick. It's a lot more satisfying than I thought it would be. Very nice. And here we can see the internals of this ridiculous little Mac Pro here. We've got 2 of our RAM DIMMs right here. I believe this is where that Intel Xeon is. And then over here, I believe we're gonna have the graphics card. Maybe this is the processor. I'm honestly not even sure. Either way, we got either the processor or the graphics card here. This also potentially could be either the graphics card or the processor. And then right here, we've got our 500 gigabyte SSD. And of course, our other 2 RAM DIMMs. Just to give you guys an idea of how easy it was to upgrade the RAM in your Mac back in the day, literally all you had to do was push up on this little tab at the top, and they kind of just open up like a door, and you had very easy access to just do that. And as I said earlier in the video, this is something that you will never ever be able to do to another brand new Mac again because of Apple Silicon and how everything is so integrated now. But back in the day, it was that easy. Go ahead and slide that back in here and push the door back in. Very nice, very elegant. Let's go ahead and put its clothes back on. I'm just still like so in awe, and this thing is like a lot heavier than I remember them being too. It feels like it weighs at least 10 pounds, and it's not that big either, as you can see. Now that we've kind of gone over the whole design and exterior and everything that's inside of this thing, I think it's time we finally get it plugged into a display and turned on for the first time. And what better screen to do that with than a period correct Thunderbolt display? In last week's M4 Mac Mini unboxing video, I introduced this display and I mentioned that it's for a project that I have coming up in about a month or so. And this is not that project. This was completely unexpected, but when I saw this thing for 180 bucks on eBay, I just couldn't help myself. But the fact that these 2 devices were sold side by side in the Apple Store in 2013, it's just too fitting to not use this display again. Check this out. No adapter necessary. Isn't that just a beautiful thing? So I've got it all connected to the Thunderbolt display here, and I know this looks bad with the wire right here, but I've got it set up this way so I can show you what happens when you turn this thing on. Now look, for a computer of this age, that was a pretty fast boot. I barely even was able to get the B camera framed up before it showed the desktop. Oh man, old Mac OS was just so pretty. Like, look at the skeuomorphism and just look at all these old app icons. I'm not gonna lie, this was a pretty big reason I bought this one specifically, because it still has OS X Mavericks on it. Let's actually go ahead and take a look at what version this is on. Yeah, 10.9.5. We've got the 3.5 gigahertz 6-core Intel Xeon E5, 32 gigs of RAM, and we should have half a terabyte of storage. Yep, 500 gigs. And I have to do this old trick that I used to do with my MacBook. Yep. Oh man. Look at these old icons, man. I love this. This macOS just doesn't look like this anymore, and I'm really nostalgic for this look. Mainly because Mavericks was what was new when I first switched to Mac back in 2013. I need to go ahead and get this on the Wi-Fi here and see how useful Mavericks even is anymore. I connected right up to the Wi-Fi. That's a good start. Let's first see what kind of updates we have here. Looks like we can download macOS Sequoia, which I don't think these support. I think these stopped at Monterey. Taking a look at the top of this App Store window, it's got 2 updates sections, so that's kind of interesting. What kind of updates do we have here? iBooks, iTunes, Mac EFI Security Update 2015. Yeah, again, I don't think this thing was ever like actually used. Like, look, you've got updates that are 10 years old at this point. Mac EFI Security Update 2015, Security Update 2016. That's crazy. So what it looks like to me is someone just bought this Mac Pro and didn't use it, and it just sat in its box. Like, they took it out, set it up, and as you saw, it didn't even require a password when I signed in, which is interesting because the eBay seller told me that the password was 123456, but it just kicked me right to the desktop when I started it up. So very interesting. I'm not entirely sure why someone would have bought this, because this was not a cheap machine back in the day. I believe with these specs, it had to have been at least $4,000. Maybe I can look with the Wayback Machine later and see for sure. But the fact that this thing might actually be pretty much brand freaking new is pretty cool. And I'm hesitant to install any of these updates because I've got a few more videos planned with this thing in the very near future. And as I said earlier, one of the main reasons I bought this one specifically was because of the fact that it had OS X Mavericks on it. So I do have a plan for this thing that does involve updating it, but I also have a way to keep this copy of OS X Mavericks safe. Let's open up Safari and see if we can, let's try to load Apple's website. Oh, geez. Oh, that's right. With Mavericks, that little green button did not full screen Windows. It was over on the right. Oh, that animation is so slow too. Oh my gosh, was that really how it was? That's crazy. That feels so slow compared to how it is now. Oh yeah, this this is not loading anywhere near properly. Let's try to buy. Oh, I can't even click on the buttons. Okay, that just brings me back to the home page. Jeez. Let's see if I can look at some accessories. Oh my gosh. Oh, and my favorite version of macOS is entirely useless in 2025. Ain't that a shame? Yeah, look guys, we've got the Beats, we've got cases, we've got MagSafe, there's Apple Vision Pro right here, that's really cool. Oh, that's actually kind of sad to see that this is the state of OS X Mavericks. But what are you gonna do? It's 12 years old. Another thing I want to take a look at is the old system preferences. Oh man. This is so significantly in every single way better than the new system settings app that I think launched with macOS Ventura. This was perfect. This needed no improvement, it needed no changes, and they went and completely ruined it and made it friggin' impossible to find anything you're looking for. It honestly kind of feels like Windows 10 and 11 settings. Maybe not quite that bad, but pretty close. But with this, man, everything was just laid out so nicely. Like, oh, you need to look at your security? There's that right there. Check that out. It looks like Fire Vault is turned off. Yeah, and there's no password set. Interesting. This was just a much better era for macOS. As far as hardware goes though, this was the era of Apple that was not long after Steve Jobs passed, and they were like in a race to the bottom to make every one of their products as thin and as light and as small as possible, even if it was completely detrimental to the actual performance of the product. Because a year after this came out, we got the iPhone 6. You guys remember Bendgate? And then a year after the iPhone 6, we got the MacBook that was just called MacBook, where the butterfly keyboard was introduced, which then in 2016 snuck its way over to the MacBook Pro and completely ruined those MacBooks for, I think, 3 years before they came out with the 2019 Touch Bar and went backwards to the scissor switch keyboard and were like, yeah, we made a mistake, sorry. But this is kind of what started that whole terrible but really pretty era of Apple products, because I will admit the Touch Bar MacBook Pros looked sleeker than the MacBook Pros we have now, though the MacBook Pros that we have now are multiple times better than the Touch Bar MacBook Pro, and same with this Mac Pro right here. It looks really cool. I like that when you turn it, the ports on the back light up so you can see what you're doing in a dark room, but compared to the performance that you can get out of something like a Mac Studio now, this is not that great, and it wasn't even really that great when it came out, especially at its price point. Feels like we're actually moving a decent amount of air at the top with that single fan, even though it hasn't actually done anything useful other than sit on the desktop and show me the pretty skeuomorphic design of the past. But yeah, this was what started that weird era of Apple where everything had to be small and thin and is just as tiny as possible. And to pack this much power into a machine like this back in the day was actually a pretty impressive feat. Didn't really end too well, but it was a cool concept in my opinion. There you go guys, that is going to be it for this quick look at the 2013 Mac Pro, and as I mentioned, this was regarded as pretty much the worst Mac Pro that Apple ever released, but just the design by itself was so cool. Even though it was incredibly impractical for their target demographic of this machine, I always thought it looked awesome. Like just this ominous little black cylinder sitting on your desk doing all this crazy stuff. It never really reached its full potential in my opinion. I think if they were to bring back this design with Apple Silicon, it would be freaking killer. And they already kind of did that with the Mac Studio, but this design in particular is just something that we do not get from Apple anymore. And that's kind of a shame, but to be real, it is for the greater good. As I said, I do have a few more videos planned with this thing that are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, but until then, that is going to be it for this video, so I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, thank you for watching.